They thought they were arresting some helpless teenager on a quiet suburban street. What they didn't know was that his mother was the district attorney. And I don't play when it comes to justice. If you believe no one is above the law, not even fake cops, then hit that like button and subscribe to the Kind Heart Stories for more real justice moments that'll give you chills. It was a warm evening, the kind of suburban calm where streetlights flickered on one by one and kids hurried home before curfew. My son, Ethan, 15 and full of that quiet confidence only good kids carry, was walking home from basketball practice. He had his duffel slung over his shoulder and earbuds in, lost in his playlist. But what he didn't know was that trouble had wheels, and it was rolling toward him fast. A dark gray SUV pulled up beside him, tinted windows, flashing red and blue lights mounted on the dash. Ethan froze. He'd been raised to respect law enforcement, to comply. Two men stepped out wearing cheap uniforms, badges that didn't shine like real ones. "Stop right there!" the tall one barked. "You're trespassing on HOA property." Ethan stammered, "Sir, I live just 3 blocks that way." But before he could finish, the shorter man grabbed his arm. "Save it. You match the description of a vandal," he sneered, shoving him toward the SUV. Ethan's voice trembled. "Call my mom, she's the district." A slap silenced him. Back home, I was finishing up a late case file when I realized Ethan hadn't texted back. I called, no answer. 10 minutes turned into 30. Then my phone rang, an unknown number. A shaky voice said, "Mom, your son's been detained by HOA security." I froze. HOA security? I knew every official department in this county. HOA? Police
This
weren't one
evidence
of them.
clearly
Something
shows the
inside me
negligence
went
in this
cold.
case, Your Honor.
I grabbed my
Objection, Your Honor.
badge,
Context
my
of this
coat,
evidence
and
is
my
being
gun, and
misrepresented.
drove into the night with one thought pulsing through my mind. Someone just made the worst mistake of their life. The GPS pinned Ethan's phone near the corner of Maple and Creekside, an unfinished subdivision. Empty lots and dim streetlights. I part moving silently. My instincts screamed wrong. Then I saw it, the gray SUV, parked by an abandoned house. I approached from the shadows, recording everything on my phone. 2 men stood by the vehicle, smoking, laughing. In the back seat, my son, wrists zip-tied, crying silently. My pulse hit like thunder. I called dispatch. "This is District Attorney Clara Morgan. I have 2 suspects impersonating law enforcement, armed, detaining a minor. I need backup now." Before I could blink, the shorter man spotted me. "Hey! Who are you?" He barked, hand on his holster. I stepped out of the dark, badge raised. "Federal ID! Hands where I can see them!" They laughed. The taller one smirked. "Letty, you've got no idea who you're messing with. HOA authority extends over all common property." That's when I said, cold and clear, "HOA authority doesn't extend to kidnapping a DA's son." For a moment, no one moved. Then I heard sirens, the real kind. My partners arrived fast. Within minutes, the fake officers were face down, cuffed, their badges confiscated. Ethan stumbled into my arms, shaking. "Mom, they said I wasn't allowed to walk home here." I hugged him tight. "They said a lot of wrong things, baby. But they just said the wrong thing to the right woman." The next morning, I was already in my office. The police report was thicker than I expected. The 2 suspects, Larry and Brent Hargrove, weren't just rogue HOA enforcers, they were part of a bigger racket. They'd been extorting homeowners, staging fake arrests to scare families into paying violation fines. They'd gotten away with it for months, until last night. Now, with their fingerprints, dash cam footage, and Ethan's testimony, it was an open and shut case. But I wasn't done. I went through the HOA board records. Guess who signed off on their community enforcement contract? The president herself, Karen Whitmore, a woman who'd spent years bullying neighbors, manipulating codes, and threatening anyone who stood up to her. When I showed the evidence to my colleague, he whistled. "You're going after her." "Oh," I said, "I'm not just going after her. I'm burning her empire down, legally." The courtroom was packed. Cameras lined the back wall. Karen Whitmore stood at the defense table, perfectly dressed, smiling like the world still spun her way. When I walked in, her face dropped. "Mrs. Whitmore," I began, "you authorized illegal detainment, fraud, and impersonation of law enforcement. How do you plead?" Her lawyer stammered. "My client was." "Save it." I interrupted, slamming the photos down. "You paid men to act as police, to intimidate citizens, to detain a minor. My son, you're not the law. You're the reason people stop trusting it." The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Whitmore, this evidence is undeniable." She turned pale as her fake empire crumbled in front of 100 witnesses. The gavel came down. "Guilty on all counts." Ethan was in the front row, watching justice unfold. He looked proud, not because his mom won a case, but because the truth finally did. The HOA dissolved within weeks. Larry and Brent were sentenced for kidnapping and impersonation. Karen's assets were seized, her title stripped, her mansion now under foreclosure. But the best part, the same neighborhood she ruled through fear started to rebuild, with compassion. Neighbors planted new trees, painted homes, held a block party. No one wore uniforms. No one issued fake fines. They just lived free again. That night, Ethan and I sat on our porch eating ice cream. "Mom," he said, "I didn't know people could be that cruel." "They can," I said softly. "But remember, one brave truth can stop 1,000 lies." Months later, the memory of that night still echoed faintly. The flashing red and blue lights, the fear, and the sharp cry of my son as he was dragged into that SUV. But time had a strange way of healing the most jagged wounds. Ethan was stronger now. So was I. One late afternoon, I was driving home when I saw a moving truck in front of Karen Whitmore's old mansion. The grand house looked smaller now, stripped of the arrogance that once surrounded it. A young couple stood outside, laughing as their daughter ran barefoot through the front yard. The sight tugged at me. I parked, got out, and introduced myself. "Hi, I'm Clara. I live just across the street." The father extended his hand, a friendly smile on his face. "You must be the Clara, the DA who stood up to the fake cops." I smiled modestly. "That's what they tell me." He chuckled. "Good. My wife and I read all about it. We were scared to move into this neighborhood after everything that happened, but honestly, knowing you're here makes it feel safe." His daughter, maybe 6 or 7, ran up to me, holding a small American flag. "Look, my daddy said we can hang this outside." That single image. The little girl waving her flag, laughter echoing through what was once a place of fear, nearly broke me. "That's beautiful," I said softly. "Hang it proud."
I need to know more.
As I walked home, I passed the corner
This
of
isn't
Maple
enough.
and Creekside, the spot where it all began. I could still see faint tire marks in the dirt, remnants of that dark SUV. But this time, there was something new, a fresh garden, wildflowers blooming under the sunlight, planted by the neighbors as a sign of peace. Ethan met me there, a basketball under his arm. "You okay, Mom?" "Yeah," I whispered, smiling at the flowers. "More than okay." He nodded toward the new family's house. "Think people really change?" I looked at him, eyes soft but certain. "No, Ethan. People don't always change, but good people, they grow. And that's enough to rebuild everything." We stood there for a moment, mother and son, survivors of corruption, now witnesses to renewal. The same street that once symbolized fear now glowed with hope, laughter, and the sound of children playing freely. Later that evening, as the sun sank low and painted the sky in gold, Ethan sat beside me on the porch. "Mom," he asked, his voice quiet. "Yeah," he smiled. "You didn't just save me, you saved everyone here." I reached out and squeezed his hand. "No, sweetheart. We did. We spoke up when it mattered. That's what makes the world a better place." The cicadas hummed and the stars started appearing above. Somewhere, justice had taken root, not in the courtroom, not in the headlines, but right here, in a boy's heart and in a neighborhood reborn. If you believe that courage, truth, and love can heal even the deepest wounds, hit that like button and subscribe to the Kind Heart Stories. Because every act of justice starts with one brave heart, just like yours. "Mrs. Whitmore," I began, "you authorized illegal detainment, fraud, and impersonation of law enforcement. How do you plead?" Her lawyer stammered.
"My client was. Save it."
I interrupted, slamming the photos down. "You paid men to act as police, to intimidate citizens, to detain a minor, my son. You're not the law. You're the reason people stopped trusting it." The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Whitmore, this evidence is undeniable." She turned pale as her fake empire crumbled in front of 100 witnesses. The gavel came down. "Guilty on all counts." Ethan was in the front row, watching justice unfold. He looked proud. Not because his mom won a case, but because the truth finally did.